Welcome to the Beantown Beatdown.
Matthew Burris.
Gabe Shamus.
And before we get into some combat sports news, first and foremost, congratulations to the Boston Red Sox winning last night.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Astros 8-6, man.
Yeah. And, of course, our New England Patriots won on Sunday, heading the Kansas City Chiefs, their first loss of the season.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and it's funny because I talked about it actually on my video on Facebook on my page.
Yep.
I talked about Boston sports, and I said it's funny how last season the Chiefs beat us in our first game of the season, and now we beat them this year.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so good time to be a Boston sports fan.
Yes,
and of course, the Pats are playing this Sunday against the Bears in Chicago. Yeah. So that should be a good game. And the Red Sox are one game away from heading back to the World Series.
Oh, yes. Let's take it. Cheers on that.
Dilly dilly. And now let's get into it. First and foremost, Bellator's weekend. Last weekend, of course, Ryan Bader defeated Matt Mitrione by decision. It went to a decision. It was pretty much a boring fight.
Yeah.
A lot of takedowns and stuff like that. And, Bader should have went for the finish,
right.
But he's in the finals. But the next night, the main event for Fedor versus Chael Sonnen was even better because Fedor stopped Chael Sonnen by TKO.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So, therefore, Chael douchebag Sonnen is out. He is out of the tournament.
Out of there.
And January 26th will be Fedor Emelianenko versus Ryan Bader.
Nice.
And the winner of this will be the Bellator heavyweight champion of the world.
Okay.
Yep. And I'll, of course, be talking more about Chael Sonnen and the last round.
Right. Exactly.
Yep. And also in some boxing news, Terrence Crawford over the weekend as well won his fight against Jose Benavidez Jr. And that was a phenomenal fight for 12, well, I'd say for 11 rounds because the first round was more of a filling out process. But from rounds 2 up until the 12th round when Crawford got him out of there with knocking him down twice and ending the fight in a TKO, Crawford crushed him. Just absolutely gave him a boxing lesson. He really did crush him. And let me tell you something. If next year, if he doesn't fight Manny Pacquiao, Keith Thurman, or Errol Spence, those top welterweight guys, travesty.
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
indeed.
Absolutely. He's got to fight those guys next.
Yeah. And
also in some boxing news, Floyd Mayweather is trying to get a fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov, and they're gonna try and set up that fight for next year. And of course, I don't think Mayweather should come out of retirement again. I mean, this is clearly a payday. He says that he's trying to get paid more than he did in the McGregor fight. And I just think that Mayweather should stay retired. But having said that, I think Mayweather will beat Khabib. I mean, Khabib should definitely... I mean, Khabib is a good fighter, in MMA, but as we learned from Conor, just because you're good at MMA doesn't mean you're going to be good in boxing or in kickboxing.
Right, exactly. I mean, so for those that don't know, like, would this be a new rivalry, or would this be going back for a rematch?
Well, what do you mean?
McGregor and
Mayweather?
Yes.
I I don't. Well, there has been talks about a Mayweather and McGregor rematch, but
No. This fight he wants to come out of retirement for.
oh, Mayweather. Well, for
Mm-hmm.
Mayweather, well, see, you got me confused. Well, Mayweather, I think for Mayweather, it's not so much of a rivalry. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I said, this is just a payday, another payday for Floyd Mayweather,
Right.
and
Right.
but it's like,
But I guess what you were trying to say there is that it also wouldn't accomplish much. This isn't like a rematch like Bad Blood and Let's Do It Again, like, type of thing. This would be like, it actually wouldn't accomplish much for him to fight this guy.
yeah, and there's also Canelo Alvarez also called out Floyd Mayweather. He says that if Floyd is coming back, he wants Floyd to give him a rematch, and
Mm.
that would that would somewhat make better sense because Canelo is the top boxer right now. He's
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
WBA and WBC middleweight champion of the world right now. He's actually going to be moving up to super middleweight, fighting a guy in December.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing is, Floyd has never fought at middleweight. He's fought all the way from super featherweight all the way up to super welterweight.
Okay.
So, and Floyd has said that in the past that he barely made super welterweight.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Like I said, clearly, I think he should just stay retired.
Right. Exactly.
But you know, all that money,
Mhm.
it's
My guess is, as a fan, though, you'd also like would you also be out there cheering for him?
well, yeah, hell yeah,
Hell yeah, because you got it, right?
yeah. But if he loses, that legacy will be tarnished.
Right, exactly. Yep.
So also this weekend, just for all you Ronda Rousey fans, she will be in Boston because the WWE will be here on Sunday at the Garden for a
nice.
super show, both Raw and SmackDown. That's a house show. For those of you who don't know, a house show is a non-televised event, and I've actually had the privilege of going to 2 house shows
Awesome.
as a wrestling fan.
Mm-hmm.
And Ronda Rousey will be there.
All right, Ronda Rousey coming to Beantown.
Yeah, so of course I don't have tickets for that, and neither does Gabe.
Yeah, but yeah, congratulations to all our Beantown friends who might be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're gonna get into World Outside the Ring. So Gabe, take it away.
All right. So, World Outside the Ring, how we do. So basically, I've been, I want to talk about something that I'm actually surprised I've not talked about before. I think, being a fighting show and, me bringing a different perspective, we should have talked about this long before. What does it mean to have had enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of street fighting, is based off of getting one person to have had enough to call uncle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and so like there's we've talked before about how there is like kind of spectator sport fighting and there is street fighting and they're not always the same, right? But the phrase that's used is I've had enough, and or I haven't had enough.
Yeah.
Come at me again, right? So I've been thinking about what you obviously know a lot more about what that means for fighting, right? But go ahead.
I mean, I've used the the line from Rocky. From Rocky Balboa, it's not about how hard you hit; it's about how hard you can get hit. You can keep moving forward.
Exactly. Yep. So I mean, that's part of it. If you think about it, like that's part of the whole. Have you had enough? Have you not had enough? And to know when to fold them is also, I think I have mentioned that phrase at one point before.
Yeah, me too. That song.
Yeah, exactly. So that's also part of it. Know when you've had enough. Even though in fighting, you can't admit that, or at least you're not supposed to, and until you're really just blood and snot. You're not supposed to say that you've had enough. But what's interesting is that. I feel like even we can still be strong in our everyday lives, but have like these moments where it's like, oh God, this again, I've had enough. You know what I mean?
You have to I mean, yeah, you have to find ways, to not quit and always,
Exactly.
to move around. But
Hmm.
you
But
know,
sometimes,
yeah, but sometimes you have to also know when to throw in the towel. You have to say like, okay, you know what, I did the best I could. This is as far as I'm gonna get, and
mhm.
now it's time to move on.
Right, right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the ways you can say it, and still, move on. Um, And then, I guess I'm also thinking about how this does relate to when people say, like I said, in your everyday life, this job sucks. I've had enough, and yet,
By that you mean your job, right?
yeah. See, I was gonna bring this into my personal job because I knew he always says, that we'll have that day when you can quit your job, and I think that's an American ideal. That is an American ideal, American prospect. I'll have enough money to quit my job. F you, money, right?
Well, yeah. Well, also to get Bloody Knuckles Productions off the ground, and
Right.
we are in the process of doing some other things and stuff.
Yep. Stay tuned. But that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's just funny. It's like because most people say yes, I'm gonna quit my job. I've had enough. Most of the time you don't mean it, and it's not just because you're a wimp. Like maybe you are a wimp sometimes, but most of the time you don't mean it just because can I pay myself over minimum wage? I don't know. There's a lot, yes, I'd rather be in business for ourselves, and that's what part of what we're doing here. But you don't realize, how much work it takes at first. And so I've now gotten to the point where I'm significantly above minimum wage, and it's taken years, and in this society it should not take so long, but it does. Where it's like I've gotten good money, I can support myself. So when does the amount of shit become too much? So if we're being honest, not for a long time, but with stuff like that, you basically get to decide when I've had too much and when I haven't. And that it doesn't have to be in a big thing like quitting your job. It can be like, okay, well, they want me to do this, company outing that I don't have to be a part of. You can have a mini like I've had enough, and
Yeah.
and write off certain things like that. And so that's what I do. Like, yeah, okay, there's work things that I have to do, but then if it's like a thing that's not obligated, blah blah blah, just for coming together, and it's like, yeah, no, I don't actually have to do that. And
Unless it's a coworker you have a crush on.
right, exactly. Yes, or something else. I'll get out of it. Hate to sound shallow that way, but I think you do have to look out for yourself and your energy, because that's also what it is. You're putting your fucking energy in, for a time, and uh, Matt hasn't had to learn this as much, but you're learning it now. It is the money that you have at the end, but it's that I had to work for this money. I had to put time into it, and that's what it is. That's why people get so weird or uptight, you might think, or just protective of money, because it's not just the money can get me things. That's like the first aspect of it, but the real aspect is that it's my time. This is the physical manifestation of my time, whether or not I was paid fairly.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I was not paid fairly for this time, but I was paid something for this time, and that's my time that I'm giving away. So we should be protective of that. We should be protective of our time, of our money, and then, yeah, sometimes it is appropriate to say, I've had enough. I'm not going to do this thing with you now. But that doesn't mean that you should think very hard before you actually burn all the bridges. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also to steer it back to the fighting part. I mean, about when you've had enough and stuff. I mean, there's plenty of fights I can mention here. Well, I mean, in boxing, like for example, we watched the Ali Frazier 3 fight,
Yeah.
and let me tell you something. I mean, both those guys could have. I mean, both those guys. I mean, they really pushed themselves to the limit. I
Right.
mean, look at. I mean, Joe Frazier was already, blind in one eye, and now the other eye was getting blind. He's getting his nose uh, busted up. He's getting his lip busted up, and
Yeah, exactly.
and Ali, he was just purely exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Pure exhausted, and he had developed a hematoma on his hip. And
So
going
like
into
putting yourself through the ringer, really.
yeah. On top of that, they're in like 100 and something degrees in Manila. We talked about how
right.
there
Yes.
was little to no air conditioning in that ring that night in Manila in the Philippines, and
So that's something people don't think about. Like it's one thing to be like in a comfortable room and whatever. Like yeah, I could fight for hours in the most comfortable room. But if you're actually 90, 100 degree heat over, it's like not the same. You are sapping your energy just by that.
well, yeah, exactly. I mean, and Frazier wanted to go on. Frazier wanted to go on for one more round.
Right.
And Eddie Futch, his trainer, he said like, no, you've had enough, man. You're getting the shit kicked out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was a good thing because, Fred Pacheco, he said like, look, if he comes out for the next round, we're gonna have to kill this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, we saw with Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran their first fight, the brawl in Montreal. I mean, you talk about quit when they have enough. I mean, at one point, Sugar Ray Leonard thought about quitting.
Right.
He said like at one point. At one point he thought about saying like, you know what, why don't I give up? I'll admit it, he won, but he says that, he just couldn't because his pride wouldn't let him. Mm-hmm. And plus, mind you, like leading up to the fight, Duran had called Sugar Ray's wife a whore and was bad mouthing him. So, Ray was like, okay, I'm doing this for honor.
Right.
It's like it got Sugar Ray out of his, it got him out of his, what's the word I'm looking for? Because like Sugar,
right. He was in a rut, kind of like name recognition, like his reputation was in a rut.
Well, no, not so much his reputation, but because his element. He got him out of his element because now he got Sugar Ray mad and and now
off the rails maybe.
Yeah, and that's why in that fight, Sugar Ray was trying to outslug the slugger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean that's part of it. Is that yeah, sometimes you have had enough, but you can't let pride go. Like not even pride. Like pride's not the right word necessarily, but for pride, for honor, let's actually be real. When there are certain fundamental things that are insulted, you have to be like, I'm not backing down from this, just quick side note, Ted Cruz, if someone had said that my dad might have killed the president, and if someone said that my wife was, was butt ugly, like, you think I would then go out for them? No, like he should have stayed on the attack and said, sniveling coward, don't talk about my wife that way. He said it one time and then, has been behind a certain person the whole time. And so, so you talk about Texas strength, just, FYI, that's not part of it. You don't have to be antagonistic the whole time, but I would never be civil again or be campaigning again for someone who said my wife was ugly. And maybe,
well, those Texans, they never back down from a fight.
Exactly, and this is one of the times where I'm saying, good, don't fucking back down. And so Ted Cruz shouldn't have backed down from that fight. And you said honor and everything, like, some of the things around honor I think are overblown, but if someone like attacks your family that way, then yes, you have a right to forever be uncivil to that person that did so.
Yeah. Well, of course, when Duran did that to Leonard, he got in his head, and
right.
of course, Duran also like really did not like Sugar Ray because he felt like and Duran talked about it in the No Mas documentary. He said like they were building up Sugar Ray like he was a Superman or that he was another Muhammad Ali and really Sugar Ray Leonard was a miniature Ali. He was a welterweight version of Ali.
Gotcha.
And and so Duran, Duran was already a legend. I mean, he was a lightweight champion and the fights with Esteban de Jesus and Ken Buchanan. But the fight with Sugar Ray Leonard, being Sugar Ray Leonard, a guy who was on the 76 Olympic team, which is the greatest Olympic boxing team in the world. And this guy was, he was in main events before he even won his first world title.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So for Duran, it was like, oh, okay, I'm the underdog, even though I've been a lightweight champion. And when he got into there, he was like, oh, okay, I'm going to talk shit about this guy. This is for the pride of Panama. This is for, for my family. And,
right.
And of course, eventually led to him winning the first fight.
Fascinating. Yeah, exactly. So that's part of it. And interesting that you say the pride of Panama because that's actually another thing that I think I've mentioned before, but I'll go into it now. That I'm actually very big and respectful of like the different countries' national pride when it comes to fighting. Like you've talked about the pride of Panama just there, or you talked about the pride of Mexico especially. And these fighters. I've talked about how they're kind of like the Olympics. Like they represent. That they're also representing their country, and we think of the Olympic athletes that way as representatives of the country. We don't think of fighters that way, but maybe, but sometimes, they prove that they are, what I mean? They are representatives of the country they come from. And you've talked a lot about that on the show.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, because if you really think about it, because also, I was just watching, I saw the first episode of the new show on Netflix called Fight World, which,
okay.
I saw the first episode. It was they went to Mexico to talk about Mexican boxing.
Right.
Like Mexican fighters that come out, that come out of there.
And you've mentioned a lot, yeah.
Yeah, they had the legends on there. They had Julio Cesar Chavez, they had Carlos Sarat,
right.
They had Nacho Bierstein, who's a legendary trainer, who trained Juan Manuel Marquez and a whole bunch of other fighters. And they even interviewed this one Mexican lady who's a mom. She was on drugs for years, drugs and alcohol, and she got into boxing to stay off it, and now she's a fighter, and also she fights for a better life for her son too.
Right.
And
wow.
Mexico. Like in Mexico, boxing really is the number one sport behind like soccer. There's soccer, yeah, but Mexicans, they really do love their boxers, because they're tough warriors,
right.
And they fight for their country, and they fight for their family. Like when they fight, when they say that they fight for their family, like they fight to be rich for their family, not to like buy like $1 million car. They want to buy a house for their mom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like that's. That's part of sometimes honor is like a hollow word that certain fighters use, but yeah, for Mexican fighters, for fighters of these other countries, a lot of them, it actually is, for the honor of their family. And, and like you said, that's not just in like showy things, but like, I'm going to get my mom a house. I'm going to get my sister a house. I'm going to get my brother a car so that he can have, because he can do better at his job with the car, not just, just for show. Like, this is like elevating their lives,
Well, yeah, exactly. And also the same thing with Muay Thai fighters in Thailand. You see these kids because Bangkok, Thailand is really a poverty-stricken
area.
Yeah, poverty-stricken area. Other than Muay Thai, kickboxing, and also a good movie industry, thanks to Tony Jaa, the Tony Jaa films, and Tony Jaa, Pine Ready to Cry, and some of the other movie stars there.
Mm-hmm.
It's known for its sex trade. There's a lot of whorehouses and stuff. In fact,
which unfortunately is part of like poverty, or at least it's like a symptom of poverty.
Oh yeah, in fact, actually, the if you're an American tourist, what they'll do is the prostitutes, they'll actually go, if they see an American, they'll go out to the American and try to lure them in. They'll go out and grab and touch them and try to grab the Americans, because they say, like, they assume most Americans are rich.
Right, exactly.
Of course, you would have a hard time. Of course, that would be bad for you because you're gay. They'd be like, "Ooh, American!
Right, exactly.
Come here,
like,
American.
lady, get off me!"
Yeah.
Right, but yeah, I'm sure that
Though, to be honest, there are a lot of male ladies in Thailand too.
Yeah, well, I know that. Let's not get into it. But yeah, that's I mean, that's part of it too. Like the whole, and like you as a straight guy, you might, it's like these things, you might like it, you might like the attention, but it doesn't mean that you should be like dragged in there to take advantage of them. Like, it's like this is like a complicated thing, and it puts everyone in an awkward position. You know what I mean? So that's part of the problem. And if they can make their lives better, I guess the point is, if they can make their lives better by fighting, then so much the better.
Well, yeah, because in fact, I remember they did on a ESPN E60 story. They talked about this kid who was doing Thai boxing. Kids doing Thai boxing, and they talked about the whole thing of Muay Thai, and they said that kids start out as young as 8 years old and stuff, and really, they really are fighting for their family. To give their family a better house and stuff, and and fighting out.
I mean, it is the name too. It is the name and the recognition. Let's be real. It is the cameras and the name and the recognition too. It's. I don't begrudge them that, because it is like a shout out. It is recognition. That's the other thing. Sometimes you do have to like see it on TV to be like, okay, this is recognition. For everything that's happened.
Well, yeah, but also there's also. And also, like, it's very hard being a Muay Thai fighter,
right.
Especially growing up as a kid, because it's like, one, there's no headgear, so it's like, there's a very high risk for brain damage.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that's taking like your mental health in your own hands.
Yeah. So it's a different world.
Right.
It really is a different world.
Right.
And also, it's there's actually Thai camps where the Thai camps are known for actually beating their students.
Oh shit.
Yeah, like even after a loss, they'll say like they call it an extra round, and what it is like after you've lost the fight, they'll the Thai, your master will beat you. Yeah, they'll take you back to the camp and they'll beat you. And so it's like the Thai fighters, they have really little to no fear going into the ring, because it's like, okay, what's worse, getting beat in the ring or getting beat by your master?
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow.
Yeah,
exactly. That's one of those things that I'm sure, to them it sounds good on paper. Like, oh, let's get them not afraid of the ring by you'll get beaten to a pulp either way. But like,
well, yeah, and I don't recommend this either. I mean, because like, especially when like, because like you and I are both fans of Jackie Chan. Like, we've all heard the stories of how, like, when Jackie Chan was in the Peking Opera School with Sammo Hung and Yen Bu, and how, he was sold to the Peking Opera School by his family because his family couldn't afford to take care of him, and they could legally beat him up until death. His master, they said, like, if they missed a step or like they couldn't perform a good acrobatic flip, they were punished. They were hit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I remember saying, this is when Joe Jackson was alive. Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson's father. I said, like, look, the Peking Opera Masters. I said, like, look, they make Jackie. I said, blah. Sorry. I said, like, look, they make Joe Jackson look like Father of the Year.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Yeah, so I mean that is the problem. We do have to be aware that that stuff is happening, and no, that should not be tolerated. Yeah, it's like certain. I guess at what cost is also the other phrase that we have to look at here. At what cost? Because eventually they have had enough physically of beating, and then just not to mention the trauma, the oppression, so for them to do good in the ring, well, at what cost?
Yeah, and also, I mean, and for some it will. For some it works well, and for some it doesn't. Like, for example, we were just talking about Terrence Crawford. I mean, they actually did an interview before Terrence Crawford's fight on ESPN. It's actually online right now.
Yeah.
Her mom, because Terrence Crawford's from Omaha, Nebraska, and Nebraska, that's actually the same place where the plus size model Ashley Graham is from.
Oh.
And what happened is Terrence Crawford, her mom used to beat him for getting into fights. If she found out that he was having fights on the streets and stuff like that, he would whip him with a belt. And then as he got older, he would offer kids to you say, listen, I'll give you $10 for ice cream if you can beat up my son. And she said actually that she would say, like, tell her son that you ain't gonna be shit, you ain't gonna be nothing. And she says that she was doing it to try to motivate her son and stuff. And you hear that, and it's like, okay, you see the results now, but it's just like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, again, this is another woman. Again, Joe Jackson, God rest his soul. It's like, again, she's making Joe Jackson look like a good parent.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And we were, that's the thing. After a certain point of brutality, we were not meant to be this way. We were not meant to have to experience all of that, and so and so then this goes back to like the physical aspect, or and also the mental emotional aspect, that if you're if you beat someone and you tell them they're trash and you put them down, like eventually they'll also have enough too, and that can go one of three ways. Like, you can they can make something of themselves in spite of that, yes, but they could also like have a complete breakdown, and if you're if you're not lucky, they'll completely retaliate all of that energy and hate back upon you.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a saying, pressure builds pipe. They said pressure breaks pipes, and they also say pressure.
I thought you were gonna say pressure builds pipes burst.
Yeah, pressure breaks pipes, and they also say pressure builds diamonds as well. And it's not something that I highly recommend either. I mean, right. Yes, I believe in.
Well, that's just it. We can't. That's what I'm saying. Like, even though it happens, understood, and even though, whatever, some, like we've said, some diamonds come out of it, it's not that we're recommending it. It's just that we're trying to be honest.
Well, yeah, exactly. And because, again, I grew up in a family where my mom always told me that she loved me and I always loved her. And, and for me, yes, if I ever do have children, I want my kid to work hard and, but
not to be spoiled.
Yeah, not to be spoiled, but I'm not going to be like one of those like parents who constantly push their kid, but I always tell my kid, like, look, if I see that if I see effort and you still fail, I'll be proud of you. Because look, you will, you are going to fail. It's like my cousin, my good cousin, Jeffrey Jones. Hey, Jeffrey, what's up? He always said, he says, look, focus on the moment, not the outcome.
Right.
Now, for fighting, it doesn't always work,
Right.
but in life in general, you always have to focus on the moment, not the outcome. Because if in the moment, because the outcome, it's like, okay, the outcome's not always going to go your way, but it's like, okay, if I did my best, if I did everything I could, and it still didn't go my way, then you know what? At least I did my best, so that's all you can do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you'll do something and not know that it will drastically change the outcome. That's the other thing. Like, sometimes you'll do something that was not the best, yes, but it's also like, you might not have, you didn't maliciously screw it up, but you didn't know that doing this thing would drastically change the outcome, not just a little bit, and so then you're like, oh shit, like, yes, you can say, you can and should say I'm sorry, but then like, you really just have to keep going. Like, you can't sit and mull it, and kick yourself over and over again.
Yeah, exactly, man. We did this is really, we turned the segment into a I feel like the more things should come across.
Right, exactly. Just like that.
Yeah, our public service announcement of the day.
Yes, but yeah, I'm glad we've brought this thing full circle. Why not?
Yep.
Yep.
And now we're gonna get into the last round.
Yep.
And for the last round, like I said, I was going to talk about Chael Sonnen, and I was thinking about. I've been thinking about a lot this week about Chael Sonnen, just about his career in general, and then it also how it relates to, just fighters in general, especially like boxers in the '90s, because in the '90s, although in the '90s, I say in the '90s, it really wasn't a decade that was dominated by one. Division in particular. Like, in the 90s, we had great heavyweights. We had the George Foremans. We had Mike Tyson coming out of jail. We had Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe.
Right.
But the thing is, there were fighters in that heavyweight division that were good fighters, but and some did go on to become some of them did become champions, but they didn't live up to their potential as champions as well. There were just some fighters that weren't championship material. Right. And with Chael Sonnen, you can tell that this guy is not championship material. I mean, and I call him douchebag for legit reason.
Yes, and he always does.
Yeah, because this guy, he talks a lot of shit, but when it's time for him to step up to the plate, he never comes through. Now, again, I just said how, like, focus on the moment, not the outcome. And Chael Sonnen has said so himself. I heard him one time in an Errol Hawani interview. He said, well, I've always been a performance person, not an outcome person. It's like, if I perform well, that's great. If the outcome, if it didn't go my way, then, well, it's okay. I did my best. But here's the thing. In MMA, in a sport like MMA, the way that the competition is, and how it's set up, it is a results-driven, business, in terms of fighting. It is results-driven. And Chael Sonnen has been given title shots. He's been given opportunities to step up to the plate. And when it was time for him to step up to the plate, when it was time for him to win the championship, to win the brass ring, he came up short. It's like the old saying. saying, always a bridesmaids, but never the bride.
Yeah, I guess that's true. If you it's good to step back if it's someone else's, if it's clearly someone else's turn and they're like literally about to be there, don't like jump in front of them and screw you both. But like you said, never a bride, never, if you don't actually step up and claim it when it's then your time, when you're then the one, then you don't deserve it, Yeah, it's interesting that you were talking about the '90s too. I was just thinking, like, what you said about it not being dominated by any one division. That's kind of like the music scene in the '90s as well. No, like big, continual bands, but a lot of one-hit wonders.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of one-hit wonders, but there was also, I say that the early mid-90s. Well, I mean, in the early '90s, there was like hip hop, and I mean, hip hop really had a strong grip in the '80s and *90s. I mean, this is when it was commercialized, and especially when it got to the gangster rap. You had B.I.G., you had Wu-Tang Clan, and then there was Dre, Snoop, and Tupac, and and all that stuff. And with boxing, it's like yes, in the like 91, 93, there was, of course, Tyson went to jail, but he was still part of it from 90 to 91.
Right.
But you had Bo Holyfield, George Foreman, and Lennox Lewis came on the scene. But then there was also the lighter weight guys. You had the Roy Jones, the James Tonys, the Julio Cesar Chavez, the, to a lesser extent, Meldrick Taylor, and there's also Pernell Whitaker.
Right.
You had all these guys, but, the heavyweights were always the main focus. But there were fighters in the heavyweight division that never who either were never world champions, or the ones who became world champions, but they never lived up to their full potential as champions. Like Oliver McCall, we talked about in the Unsung Heroes of Boxing. Oliver McCall, Bert Sugar, God rest his soul, great boxing historian. He said it best when talking on the episode of Ringside, talking about Lennox Lewis. He said, look, Oliver McCall closed his eyes, threw a right hand, and then when he opened his eyes, he was the heavyweight champion of the world. And, Tommy Morrison, another guy we talked about in a previous episode. Tommy Morrison, he was WBO champion, but the WBO, the World Boxing Organization, wasn't a real legitimate organization at that time. And Tommy Morrison, he lost to guys like Ray Mercer, and he lost to Lennox Lewis. I mean, he never. In fact, had it not been for the AIDS diagnosis, he could have very well fought the Holyfields and the Tysons.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, if you look at the fight with Lennox Lewis beat the shit out of Tommy Morrison, and Lennox Lewis was sort of on the comeback trail after losing to Oliver McCall.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, it's I don't know. It's kind of a crazy thing. I'm curious though. Is that the only reason you call him douchebag?
Well, no, because Chael Sonnen, he's always talked about he says I'm the best. I work hard.
Right. So you're saying it's like the false bravado that is also.
Yeah, he's one of these fighters that he believes his own press clippings. Like he says I've never been out striked. It's like, okay, your striking at best is mediocre. Okay, you're mediocre at striking. It's like there have been better fighters at. There are fighters who are better in MMA that are better at striking. Like, for example, the second fight he had with Anderson Silva, he did a... Oh, what the motherfuck? There's 40... We're only 43 minutes left in... 43 minutes into the show here.
Okay, well, I put the timer on with certain time considerations, so let's wrap it up in 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Oh, fuck. But...
You can do it.
Chael Sonnen in the second fight with Anderson Silva, he does a spinning back fist.
Yeah.
And he did a spinning back fist, and he not only did he miss, but he tripped. And it's like, even a white belt can do a spinning back fist without tripping. And if you're like someone who's never heard of Chael Sonnen, you can look at Chael Sonnen and you see him do that, and you'd be like, yeah, this guy has definitely never taken a martial arts class. And Chael Sonnen, he's he's someone who believes his own press clippings. He's a mediocre fighter.
Earned it.
Yeah, he's a mediocre fighter.
Yeah.
He says that. He even said after the Fedor fight he's going to continue fighting, but I don't see him ever getting another title shot. And if he does, then it's going to be a travesty because he hadn't earned it. He hasn't earned it, and he's clearly not championship material. Some fighters, and it's a cold, hard fact of life. Some fighters are just not championship material. And also,
how would it be better for them to act then? Like the ones that you're doing good, but you're not going to make it, type of thing.
Well, of course, I would say I wouldn't say to make this a money thing, but I would say get as much money as you can. I mean, he
or as many showings as you can, basically, as many fight opportunities that you could.
Yeah,
don't try and hype up something that's not there.
Yeah, exactly. And and plus, and in fact, if you look at his wrestling career when he was an amateur wrestler, college and trying out for the Olympics, he was mediocre too. I mean, yes, in MMA, he's like, I would say a B plus wrestler. I mean, would you put him in the same category as a Randy Couture or a Matt Lindland, a Dan Henderson, or a Josh Barnett? No, but he's B plus, and for Chael Sonnen, I would just try to get some big fights, and also he's making a lot of money with his show with Ariel Helwani, and he has his own podcast called You're Welcome, and I would say just and also he does some commentary for Bellator as well. I would say just stick to commentary, retire, go back to retirement, make your money off commentary, and just be done. And do I think he's going to be in the Hall of Fame? No, he's not Hall of Fame worthy. He's never won a world title. He talked his way into title fights. When he was time for him to win titles, he didn't step up to the plate. He came up short. So do I respect him as a fighter? Yes, because he worked hard. He's a very hard worker. But, let's face it, he's a mediocre fighter at best.
Gotcha.
Mediocre.
Gotcha.
And this is going to be our last show for a while because Gabe's sister is pregnant. He's going to go down and meet his new niece.
Yeah, exactly. I'm now an uncle. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, you're an uncle again. And we will be back Thursday, November 1st. We're going to be doing an episode of the best fights that ever happened on HBO Boxing because HBO Boxing will have its last fight on October 27th, and we're going to be doing a countdown of the best fights of HBO Boxing, and we're going to be showing that right here on this show. Special top 25 fights, and then we're going to go back to doing our show every 2 weeks, and also we will be doing a ringside episode. Stay tuned for that. We're going to be doing for November, the ringside episode we're going to be doing is the one on the anniversary of Roberto Duran versus Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. And also, one more other thing, and I promise this will be the last one. Stay tuned for this tomorrow night, Hispanic Heritage Month, Week 3, Oscar De La Hoya versus Fernando Vargas. This is going to be like my third or fourth time showing that fight. Also,
so it is on Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook, on Beantown, and also Oscar De La Hoya versus Okay, I'm gonna skip through this right now because I'm a little drunk. Yeah, Ricardo Mayorga.
Right.
And some other fights I mentioned as well. Again, I'm a little drunk, so.
All right.
But
So those will be upcoming tomorrow night. When we
Yes.
watch this.
Yeah, so please make sure you tune in and watch this. And also, I'm going to be uploading this episode as well on Facebook as well.
All right. Perfect.
All right, so from Beantown to your town, this is a Beantown Beatdown. Matthew Barish.
Gabe Chamas.
Vios
con
con Dios.
Dios.
Go Red Sox!
Woo!